Hello YouTube, it's GB from UB2 Gaming here for another movie review. This time it's Solo, a Star Wars story. If you do like this video, please do drop a like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you can get future notifications for any videos that I do, going forward. But back to the main event, the actual film itself. I was a little overwhelmed, or underwhelmed rather, overall I think. It it has some good parts, to be honest, but other parts are just not that good. There's a really good introduction to Solo. I think it really gives a good insight into the background of his character and how he came to be the Han Solo that we know in the major films. It explains well his dice, the golden ones, the one that was in the original trilogy, A New Hope. It shows how he meets Chewbacca for the first time, and of course Lando, and all that was done really well. I think Alden, the actor who played Solo, did a pretty good job. He actually does look and actually feel like a young Han Solo. He has that sort of smirk, that little bit of a cockiness and arrogance to it, but also that charm that Harrison Ford portrayed in his Han Solo. And yeah, I think the rest of the cast did a pretty good job as well. Lando was very well played by Danny Glover. I thought he did a really good job. He really did come across as a really cocky, extravagant, outlandish character. But again, he had a little bit of a charm to him, so that neither Han Solo or Lando came across as, unlikable. They were very charming, I thought, as well as being a little bit on the cocky side, a little bit playful. And it was really good seeing how their relationship developed. But saying that, I don't think Emilia Clarke was that good, to be honest. She plays the love interest of Han Solo in this film, and to be honest, I found her a bit stiff. I found her a bit emotionless, and I don't know, to be honest, I gotta be honest, I don't think, and I know Game of Thrones fans are gonna probably go angry and annoyed at this point, but I don't actually think she's a good actress. She sort of reminds me a little bit of Orlando Bloom in that she's almost getting through on a sort of appearance and attractiveness, and I think they both played relatively emotionless characters that made them famous. Legolas for Orlando Bloom and Daenerys, especially in the early seasons in Game of Thrones. So I was a little bit disappointed with Emilia Clarke and her performance. I thought L3, the droid in the film, was actually really good. She was actually kind of sassy and had quite a lot of good humor to her, but there were some elements I thought was a little bit forced, like she's sort of at some points battling for robots to get them equal rights, and not being treated like objects and toy things that belong to humans. That was a little bit forced in, I thought, a little bit sort of what the Star Wars films have been criticized for, as being almost too much about political statements and almost social justice Star Wars, which I will say actually this film I think cut out a lot of that. Like, it's not like the other films where it's like female lead, white male is a bad guy, and putting people from multiple ethnic backgrounds as the good guys, and the white men are the all the bad guys like we've seen in other films. So I thought that was really good about this film. But moving on to the actual story itself, which I will keep spoiler free. I couldn't help but feel like this film feels like a side note. It feels like something that is not very epic, it's not very grand, there's no real massive scale to it. I couldn't help but watch a film thinking like it really is just a little side story. And I know that's what these sort of individual films are supposed to be, the Star Wars story series rather than the main series, but Rogue One felt epic. It felt like it was a hugely pivotal moment in the history of Star Wars, but this film Solo just doesn't sort of feel that way. They do actually try and tie it in, and we're going to spoil here in terms of the grand scale of the series, the Rebels versus the Empire, but it felt kind of forced in my opinion. I didn't really buy into it too much. Saying that as well, in terms of the storyline, I thought some of the characters were underwhelming. Like, they didn't really leave much of an impression. Again, I won't go into spoilers, but certain side characters die, and it doesn't really give you much of an impact. It was almost like they hadn't had enough time on screen for you as an audience member to actually feel any sort of emotional attachment to these characters and actually feel anything when these characters die. It was a little bit underwhelming, I thought. The storyline, although simple and I suppose fairly easy to understand, it just never really felt epic. It never really felt grand. and I think that is something that holds back the film a little bit. There are some nice twists and turns. Again, obviously not going into spoilers, but I personally did find them a little bit predictable. That might not be the case for other people, but yeah, I did feel like there were some nice it was a nice simple story, but like I said, it just doesn't feel like it's a pivotal major Star Wars film. And maybe that's why, for anyone who hasn't read up on it yet, but the box office performance of this film has been poor, whereas the previous three new Star Wars films, Episode 7, Episode 8 and Rogue One, have been huge monumental box office hits and set all sorts of records and things like that. Han Solo, A Star Wars Story, has actually been relatively poor. I think they reckon it's trending to maybe hit the $600 million mark total, whereas obviously the other three films comfortably hit over $1 billion. So that's a little bit poor on their part, but I don't think the film's actually that bad. It's like average to decent. It's not too bad, but yeah, it's certainly not as good as some of the other films. Although I would argue it might be better than Last Jedi, but like I said, it just didn't feel very epic or grand, and it lacked that sort of punch, really. That great finale, in my opinion. Like, it was a little, like I said, underwhelming. Saying that, I think probably the highlight of the whole film, and I absolutely won't go into spoilers here, I don't want to spoil this at all for anyone, because it really is one of those sort of moments, like really amazing, especially for any of you sort of hardcore Star Wars fans out there. But there's an amazing cameo. It's just an amazing cameo, like really one of those sort of jaw-dropping moments. And I'm a pretty, knowledgeable Star Wars fan, so I sort of related to, that's how this character is able to make this cameo. But I know for people who aren't devoted Star Wars fans, who haven't maybe seen the extended universe and don't really care about the main films, it's going to come as a little bit of a surprise, like, wait, what? How is that possible? But yeah, it's an amazing cameo, and it's arguably the highlight of the film, which also sort of leads me to saying that I think this film, one of the reasons why it feels so smaller and not so epic, is because it's clearly setting up for future films. Like, to me, it seems clear that they're going to try and do a trilogy of solo films, which is why they probably will be even more disappointed that the box office performance has been poor. But yeah, the way they've left the storyline, like, they definitely can't just leave the film as it is. To get full closure, and like I said, this cameo, it really leads me to believe that there has to be sequels, at least one more, if not two more, which hopefully will be able to address some of the issues that I've outlined here. But overall, I feel like Han Solo is definitely worth a watch. I think if you're a deep, devoted Star Wars fan, hardcore, you don't need me to tell you to watch a film, you're going to watch it anyway. But I think even for those who are sort of more casual Star Wars film fans, who maybe just generally watch your films and are a bit unsure about this, I do think it's worth a watch. But I just go in there with a little bit low expectations. Like, it's just, like I said, a side story. Just look out for the cameo at the end. I think some of the humor's pretty good as well. Although I would say it's entertaining, but it is a little bit bland, I think. I mean, if I had to give this film an overall rating, I would say it's probably a 6 out of 10, maybe a 7 at best, probably because of that cameo, like I said. And I think some of the performances of Glover and Alden in playing Han Solo and Lando was very good. But yeah, like I said, overall, I think I'm probably going to give it a 6 out of 10. And I think it's probably worth a watch, but definitely is probably the worst out of these Star Wars films so far. I mean, I'm not a big Last Jedi fan, but Last Jedi at least, had superb sort of action, and it was epic and grand, even though I thought a lot of the directions they took with the characters were poor. But that's a different story. I could probably do a ranting video about that. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. If you did enjoy this movie review, please do drop a like, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and hopefully you can watch and keep an eye on my future videos. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.